All right, so what's up, man?
Man, I'm doing well. It's been beautiful weather down here. We get a little bit of it in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but then it gets hot and it stays hot until like September. So we enjoy the heck out of it right around this time of year. Baseball's going in 10 different directions: youth, high school, college, pro. I mean, everybody's rocking and rolling. So makes this time of year fun. Plus, we have crawfish boils and all that stuff. And then it gets hot, and it is what it is.
I know we were talking about, where we lived and all that good stuff. You were talking about the beach, and I was talking about how many people are moving here, and it's crazy how, it's always a joke now. I'm 43 now, but when you're younger, when we show up to the hotels and stuff, when you're in high school, when you get out of high school, you look for people jumping off the balconies into the pool and acting crazy, and that's where you want to be. And then at some point, it just changes. You get as far away from that as you can.
Absolutely. No, look, and you ride to go to wherever these destinations are. And yeah, when you're younger, you have one thing in mind. When you're older, it's like, okay, how can we all be happy and not just one of us? you know, and mama needs to be happy or nobody's happy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the main thing. So, like I said, we'll talk about your journey and all that good stuff. And I wanted to start off with talking about, as a kid, who influenced your path to Major League Baseball? Because me being a kid, going to play home run derby and things like that, we would wear the batting helmets, and somebody would be Ken Griffey Jr., somebody would be Frank Thomas, and I always steered more toward. I would always Tony Gwynn. When I played ball and stuff, I
Oh,
always tried to
yeah.
mimic my game after Tony Gwynn. I love the smaller bat and just how good of an athlete he was, or I would always be like a power hitter like McGuire. So who influenced you growing up?
Man, so I moved down to Louisiana at 13 years old. For my first 12 years, I was in the cornfields in the middle of Illinois. So I came home from school every day and the Cubs were on. And so Ryan Sandberg, I'm 48. So, 5 to 10 years old was the middle of the 80s when Ryan Sandberg is one of the best players. He played the game the way that I liked watching it be played. Actually, sheepishly, and I would probably get slapped on the wrist by all the Cubs fans, but I loved watching the Cardinals play too. They played the way that I wanted to play: steal bases, play really good defense, pitch really well, switch hitters all over the place. And so I kind of had this, I liked watching both teams play. So Ryan Sandberg, Ozzie, because I ended up floating to shortstop because I was capable. And man, you said it, Tony Gwynn. My aunt and uncle moved from LaSalle, Peru, Illinois, out to El Cajon, California. So they were huge Padres fans. They had season tickets. I actually got to go to a couple games when we went and visited them when I was probably 10 or 11 years old. And yeah, Tony Gwynn was just the standard. And then as I kept playing, I appreciated Tony Gwynn even more because those
Mhm.
7, 8, 9 pitch at bats and then a single the opposite way on a bastard pitch just just beats you up as a pitcher. And you have to face 4 or 5 guys like that in a lineup, and you've got 35 pitches in the first inning, and you're just, okay, well, maybe I'll go 4 today instead of 7. So yeah, those are the type of guys that in that baseball era, like I said, I came home latchkey kid, you know, got in the house, tried not to burn the thing down, and put on WGN and just rock and roll.
It's crazy you say that because I'm surprised there's a lot of Cubs fans, but I'm surprised there's not more Cubs fans because, like we talked about, where I grew up in West Virginia. So, around 87, 88, I was in kindergarten, first grade, and that's all we had was pretty much the Cubs and the Braves. So I would get home from school and, in the afternoons throw on a Cubs game, and that's where my fandom started. And it starts, they didn't have lights on the field till 88, and that, but all the afternoon games after school and stuff. And that's when everything started for me. They scored. I was watching a game. I forget who they were playing. They scored 7 runs in an inning, and I was absolutely hooked. I've been a Cubs fan my whole life.
That'll do it.
Right. It really.
I mean, I'll tell you this: everywhere we went, I mean, when I played in Philly, Cleveland, Kansas City, and I played for a bunch of teams in Detroit. Cubs fans are there. There's a lot of them. I don't
Right.
think they. I mean, you did have the Bears and Michael Jordan when you were in Chicago and the Bulls to kind of contrast that the Cubs were losing. But man, the Cubs were like your the love of your life that just wouldn't make eye contact with you.
Right.
you know,
That's the perfect way to
and the
describe it.
Bulls and Walter Payton and the Bears and the '85 Bears and all that stuff. So you had like this winning that came out of it all, but the Cubs just wouldn't give it to you. So I think there's a ton of Cubs fans, but they ended up wearing a bunch of Bulls and Bears gear during that time. And yeah, that's kind of my take on that. There are Cubs fans everywhere. They travel well. when I watch a lot of games now. I watch a lot of college games and pro games, just kind of on in the background because it's kind of my, my background music. And when I watch Cubs games and they're in wherever, San Francisco, Sacramento, even, like, you just look and you're like, man, there's a lot of Cubs jerseys in the crowd. And I think that's the basis of it, is that you came home, you had a couple stations, back in the day, and WGN was one of them, TBS for a lot of guys. That's why the Braves were so popular, and the Braves backed it up by being really, really good, as we all grew up. So, I mean, I thought the Cubs, I actually had coaches like Leon Durham was our hitting coach in AAA one year, and the Bull was the first baseman for them before Mark Grace came along. And Gracie was he was the I guess he was a color guy out in Arizona when I was there for a month. And it was just really cool to meet some of your heroes and or play against them. And actually, a funny little anecdote to that is, in 2000, I'm in my first big league year. I'm 22 years old. My mom and my sister come to the game in Kansas City. We're playing the Orioles, and I give up a home run to Cal Ripken Jr. Like, not big news, but my mom cheered because she thought it was so cool. And my sister's like, Mom, you can't do that. Like, this is terrible. And she's like, he just gave up a home run to a legend, to a Hall of Famer, to somebody, the Iron Man. Like, this is Cal Ripken Jr. He'll never ever be able to say, like, Cal Ripken Jr. didn't hit a homer. No, you gave up one. So just to really, to be able to do some of that stuff is wild. I picked up my son from practice last night about 9:00, and some of the boys, because I'm not coaching that team, I'm just Cavan's dad, and they're asking me questions about, like, hey, so who did you pitch against? And I'm like, everybody. I played for a long time, so who do you want to hear? Like Bryce Harper, Barry Bonds, Frank Thomas? Do you even know who some of those guys are? And these kids actually love baseball, so they're like, that's really cool. Did you give up homers to them? I'm like, most of them. It is what it is. And they're like, what was that like? I was like, well, you get the ball back from the umpire and try to get the next legend out that you played, video games with. As a kid, you're playing Nintendo and it's all these guys coming up, and then you're standing on the mound trying to get those guys out. Just a really cool experience. But I was telling them, it's like it happened to somebody else. I played for a long time, but you step away from the game and you have kids that play it, and you start to coach other guys that are on their way up, and you kind of, how the game is played, but you forget that you actually were the guy out there at some point. You're just coaching it. So it's been a cool kind of full cycle of baseball hitting me in different ways.
So let's talk about your path through the minors. I mean, you hear a lot of horror stories, and you talk about, the long bus rides and just the good times and the bad. So tell me about your path through the minors, and if you have any stories of those long bus rides and some of the good and the bad.
Oh man, so I was in Lansing, Michigan in the Midwest League. I was in Wilmington, Delaware, the Blue Rocks for Carolina League, and then Wichita, Kansas, the Wranglers back then, in AA. And it was kind of the same core group that kind of went from the 95 and 96 drafts, which 95, we had Beltran, and he was only a right-handed hitter when we first got him. And Kevin Long, who's the hitting coach for the Phillies now, and he's been in the big leagues for 25 years as a hitting coach. He was our hitting coach in rookie ball, and then in the fall in the instructional league. And I remember seeing him flip Beltran both ways, and he's like, "Man, you really can swing it left-handed. You've never thought about doing it?" He's like, "No, man, I'm kind of just a right-handed hitter." And they started hitting in 97, I think it was 98. He goes straight through A-ball, AA into the big leagues, and he's the rookie of the year in 99. Just to think about how talented that guy was. And that's just one, tiny little thing. But we had a really good group. We won the Midwest League in 97. We won the Carolina League in 98. And 99, we won it in Wichita. So that core group kind of came through. And those bus rides were, I guess, if I went to college, I think about it a lot, because my path, LSU's in town. I'm in Baton Rouge. And they're a juggernaut. Everybody that likes or even cares a little bit about college baseball knows who LSU is. Skip Bertman was in his prime, recruited me late. I was going to go to Alabama. He showed up in full uni to a high school baseball game with the 2 local TV station vans behind first base. And I kind of had to pivot a little bit on Alabama. But, and it ended up going pro. But I think about, like, the path, like those guys play in front of 8, 9, 10,000 guys, Josh. And then they go to the minor leagues, and 9-hour bus trip, not a private flight or even a nice charter. They play in front of 1,200 people, maybe 200, and dollar dog night. Maybe they get a packed house that nobody knows their name. And so I didn't have that. I went from playing in front of family, some of the players' girlfriends, and a couple students watching us play, to I'm playing in Lansing at Oldsmobile Park in front of 2,500 people. I didn't even care, and I was pumped to just be on a bus for 9 hours. So my viewpoint on it, maybe it's because I just loved baseball, it was kind of cool to go back to the Midwest and roll. I mean, Interstate 80 goes right by LaSalle, Peru, Illinois. So it's kind of like, man, that little kid that was me would be tickled to death that I'm on this bus right now. So I just enjoyed every step of the way. And, giving up home runs and, bench clearing brawls and just little things that would happen along the way. It was all just part of the ride, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that the spring trainings were really, really cool, because you're in like this condensed, you got all the minor leagues on one side, you got the big leagues over there. Everybody kind of knows how that is, but you get to walk by some of your heroes. You get to see George Brett on a treadmill. You get to, you're just, or soft tossing in a cage next to you while you throw a bullpen. And it kind of brings everything to light. Like, oh, I'm not that far away from maybe making this happen. But I was and not process driven the way that I would tell myself to be process driven now. But it was really about building that. What is my routine? Who am I? What am I capable of? How can I get to Double A? I didn't even think about the fact that I would be a big leaguer. I was just happy to be where I was most of the time. And maybe that was a kind of a quiet gift. UTSA is University of Texas, San Antonio. Their head coach, Patrick Hallmark, who is probably going to be an SEC head coach at some point. He's a stud, man. He was our catcher, also played center field along that path. And he went to Rice. He was there with all those guys, Mark Quinn and Berkman, yeah. All those guys were there. And he kind of quietly would just kind of guide me along the way. It wasn't mentorship. It was just, I guess you're really tight with your catchers. But he would just say, man, you just competed. And you didn't get too caught up in being maybe a top 10 prospect at some time. You didn't get caught up in anything. You just went out there and competed as hard as you could. And, the funny stories would be, some of the bus rides. One of our Dominican Republic players in 97, Carlos Paredes. He was twitchy out on the mound. He was always fidgety and all that stuff. Well, they took like $22 out of his check. And look, our checks weren't big. Like every 2 weeks we were clearing maybe $300. And they took like $22 out for something, meal money or whatever, and everybody had it taken out. He was so upset that he rode from Lansing, Michigan, all the way over to like Burlington, Iowa, and didn't sit once. Just stood in the back, and we were like, you're not proving any point. This isn't a boycott. Like, just come sit down, Carlos. What's up? And he's like, man, they take my money. They take my money. It's like, they took all of our money. Like, it is what it is. I got it my dad's first game. I'm Lansing Lugnut. We're playing the Whitecaps, the Grand Rapids, Detroit A-ball team. And there's a big left-handed hitter down on rehab. I'll remember, he looked like Debo from Friday. He was just a big unit. And he hit a home run off me his first at bat. And it hit like the third deck of the scoreboard in center field. It was a bomb. But I turned around and he was still in the box. And I went like, Crash Davis and Bull Durham on him, like, run. And I'm 19 years old. He's probably 28. And like he got to running, and I didn't say a thing. I didn't tell Pat Hallmark anything. I sat in the dugout. I guess our Royals front office must have been in Detroit, because we had like all of them there. I didn't know it. Again, I was very process driven. I didn't really see everything. And I got 8 up, 8 down, and I drilled this guy. And he threw the bat at me and came and ran out, and I got underneath him, and then the whole place piled on. Their dugout never left. They must not have liked the guy. And it was, like I said, it was my dad's first game of pro ball. Like, he hadn't seen me pitching rookie ball, and he's like, yeah, this is great. My kid's starting. It looks like he's going to be good. And then there's just this, pile of humanity, all lug nuts and one, white cap out there. And it was just weird. Like, yeah, like that it was probably 4 starts into my real like professional career. And what I understand now later, those guys would see me and be like, yeah, we had to write you up. Hey, we think this kid, might have a set on him. He wasn't scared of this 6'6", 240-pound guy that, pimped a home run and he didn't like it. But I thought it was the right thing to do based on all those WGN and TBS, games I watched over my career. So, the minor league path was, I got up quick. I was 21 when I got called up to the big leagues, straight from AA, which between you and me, I wasn't as versed on that part of the game as I was just like big league ball and how to play the game. I didn't think I could go AA to the big leagues. Now we oh yeah, of course, the prospects go from there to the big leagues. So we win the AA championship in Tulsa. And I drive from Tulsa all the way home to Baton Rouge. And like the next day, I've got like 4 days before I got to go to the Arizona Fall League. And so I'm at home. We're going to go eat at Chili's with a couple buddies, try to catch up, and maybe throw a bullpen the next day to get ready to go out there. And Muzzy Jackson was our farm director. And he calls and leaves a message on my best friend's answering machine. We didn't have cell phones. It was 99. Some people had them. I didn't. And so I hear a voicemail that's, hey, this is Muzzy Jackson. Please give me a call back. And I'm thinking he's just checking up on are you ready for Fall League? Great season, all that stuff. And so I call him back and he's like, hey, Chad, how you doing? When's the last time you threw? I was like, well, the 5th game at Tulsa, drove home, played catch yesterday. He said, could you throw tomorrow if we needed you to? Well, yeah, of course. Why would you need me to throw tomorrow? He's like, the team needs you to meet him in Detroit. And I'm like, why is the team in Detroit? Like, again, I'm not like plugged into what the Royals are doing every day. And then it clicks. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's asking me to go play in the big leagues. So, I mean, I was so nervous about to throw up in my buddy's house. His mom and dad are like, what's happening? Chad's usually pretty cool. He's over there shaking and nervous. I was running sprints at like 9:30 at night in the front yard just to get some nervous energy out. I was scared to death. I wasn't ready. I'm like, I'm 180 innings into my season. There's no more being ready. And ended up getting on a plane, going up to Detroit, playing in the last series ever in old Tiger Stadium, which was really cool. Packed house, awesome. My first hitter I faced was a Luis Polonia, came in relief. And I had faced, I struck him out. He was like the least likely guy to strike out in the league. And I had played with him on RBI baseball, growing, it's like, oh, I know this guy. Holy crap. Right. And it just, a really cool experience. And then it kind of spilled from there into the next couple of years of, going up and down with the Royals. I wasn't quite ready. I was physically ready, mentally. It's a tough gig to go against the Cleveland lineup in the early 2000s. The White Sox didn't suck with Frank Thomas and Maglio and all those guys. The Twins were really good. And so I learned how to keep my gloves up more than anything. And the Royals were good. Like we had Johnny Damon in left. We had Beltran in center. We had Jermaine Dye in right field. We had Mike Sweeney, Carlos Fables, who's the third base coach for the Jays now. He was our second baseman. We had a bunch of pitchers that were on their way. We were close, but man, those teams were really good. So got beat up a little bit, figured it out in 2001. Was supposed to be like the second guy in the rotation in 2002. And I got hurt in the offseason. I lifted so hard to try to keep up with all these guys that were doing steroids. So I'd come home and try to put on 15 pounds of muscle. And I just started to rip through the baseball a little too soon and felt a little give, like not down here, but like in here. And I just couldn't, it didn't hurt bad, but it hurt enough that I just couldn't command the ball. And then went from, maybe being a second starter in the big leagues all year to being 6 months of purgatory. Kind of went down to Winter Haven, or I guess it was Haines City, Florida, which baseball city before they moved out to Surprise, Arizona. And just kind of waited for my arm to catch up again, and it never did. Ended up having surgery in September, and you can stop me anytime. I got years to build through this.
I'm sure. You're good.
Yeah. So we'll put a pin in that, but that's my Tommy John surgery rehab, ending up with Cleveland in the next kind of stage of my career.
So did you get the call up? I thought I read something that you got the call up back in the day when Kenny Rogers went down. Is that true?
That was in Detroit in 2007, and it was out of spring training. Kenny Rogers had a blood clot. Obviously, he's like, it's Verlander, him, Bonderman, just a bunch of really good arms, and they were a World Series team in 2006. So I assumed at best, I threw 199 and 2/3 innings in 2006 in Toledo. Couldn't get called up because they didn't need to call up anybody. But I honed my craft. I changed. So when I had surgery, when I got called, I got drafted. I was 4-seam, overhand curveball, changeup. My changeup was the best off-speed pitch. Now they would celebrate. I probably spun the curveball. Later in my career, it was 31, 32, 3,300. It was good. I can only imagine what it was when I was 21, 22. So, but you couldn't get the curveball called, and the 4-seam, they wanted it at the bottom of the zone, but it would have played at the top. And the changeup was easily my best pitch because I could tell them it was coming, and it would not always get a swing and miss, but they never really just hit it hard. So that was my arsenal. Well, in AAA that year, Jeff Jones was our pitching coach. He had been a big league pitching coach, great guy in Detroit. And me, Kobe Lewis, who was a big leaguer in Texas for a while, Will Ledesma, a couple other guys, we're playing pepper, just hitting it back to, and I'm throwing these cutters because I want them to pop it up or just miss it. And Jeff Jones walks by. I pitched the day before, 85, 90 pitches, 5 innings, just freaking max effort. But I was doing well. I was 6-2 with like maybe a 3 ERA. I was doing well in AAA. And he said, "What's that?" I said, "That's a cutter." He said, "Why are you throwing that?" I mean, "Well, trying to get it off the barrel. I don't know." He goes, "That's interesting. You ever thought about trying that out on the mound, in a game?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I don't throw a cutter." He's like, "Well, go over on the bullpen mound and just throw Maxim St. Pierre as our catcher, our backup catcher. Mike Rabella was our main guy, and a couple other guys. But Maxim I threw like 10 straight cutters, and I'm talking black, 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 black. And I'm like, wait, that was really easy to do. And it was firm, right? It was a good pitch. I'm taking it. He's like, yeah, that's fantastic. 15 to 20 of those in your next outing, non-negotiable. And so I go out my next outing, and I mean, it's really good stuff. Like, I'm getting weak contact. I'm ending innings in 10 pitches instead of 20. And Jeff Jones, like, he comes in, he pulls out my scouting report. I'm eating cereal and maybe Cheetos. It was terrible, like minor league, peanut butter on a stick. I don't know what I was eating, but he slapped down my scouting report on the table. And Zach Miner, a buddy of mine that played in the big leagues too, he's next to me, and we both kind of jumped. We're like, "Jonesy, what's up?" He goes, "You just changed your scouting report. You just, for the first time in your career, 10 years in, you just changed your scouting report. During your bullpen coming up, I want to talk about throwing another pitch." And so I get in the bullpen, about 4-seamers in a row. He goes, grab the ball. We're going to throw. Tim Hudson throws this, a couple other guys that throw sinkers, and they're middle finger and dominant guys. We're going to throw a 1-seamer. It's a sinker, but it's not a 2-seamer, because we tried to throw that, and I just couldn't do it. We throw this 1-seamer, and I rip through it, and it takes off like as firm as my 4-seam. It just takes off. And he's like, 15 to 20 of those mandatory, non-negotiable. Oh, okay. I go out, I'm throwing 7 innings, 75 pitches, and just absolutely dominating, and didn't get called up, but I had changed the scouting report. And I think about that with guys that are maybe in college and hit a wall, or they're in high school and they're just not getting playing time, or even the pro guys that we're trying to make a jump with. Is like, well, are you the same guy you were when they first saw you and you're not climbing the ranks? Well, yeah, kind of. Okay, well, we need to change the scouting report, whether it's command, whether it's stuff, whether it's your arsenal, your makeup, whatever it is, we got to change the scouting report. And from that, I got called up at the end of that year. I think pitched once or twice, and then I never went back down to the minors. And it was because I now had a pitch in the zone. I could steal strikes. If you want to swing at it. I just really didn't get hit that hard. And I wish to God I'd have had that stuff when I was younger. But I kind of like Step Brothers. But even better when we're 40, but even better when you're 28, 29, that you're even still playing, long enough to do it. But yeah, that was a lesson learned on being open and curious. I could have fought him on it and been like, "No, I'm sticking with the 4-seam curveball changeup. It's who I am." But it was a lesson in his approach, because it wasn't like he shoved it down my throat. He was just like, "Hey, what about like trying to do that to hitters in game? Why would we not be trying to get guys to not swing and miss everything, but maybe just hit it off the end of the bat, maybe break a bat, get a ground ball, double play?" Like, yeah, this is interesting. And I knew better, but I didn't even think I was capable of it, but it was presented. So yeah, that was kind of the line in the sand, where after that, I felt like I was more of a big leaguer than I'd ever been before.
So as far as
Kenny Rogers got
preparation,
hurt. No, wait, your basis for it. Sorry, just the basis. So Kenny Rogers in spring training, I thought I was going to go in, maybe be a reliever out of spring on a really good team, and Kenny just wasn't feeling right in spring. Gets diagnosed with the blood clot. Probably going to miss 2 to 3 months while because you got to shut down and then build back up. So it's a 6-week shutdown, a 6-week buildup. And I ended up starting on a really good team. I think I was 6-2 with maybe a 4.1, 4.2 ERA through that period of time in the season, and was a really good fifth starter for a team that would just offensively beat up the other fifth starter. So it's kind of a sweet spot.
so as far as minors to the majors and preparation and adjustments and things like that, I kind of have a couple questions I can wrap into one. What did the preparation look like? How did it differ from the minors to the major leagues? And also, as far as moving from a starter to the bullpen, how did your preparation and adjustments, differ from that?
Yeah, great questions. And ones I had to ask myself, to be honest, because I had no idea. I'd watched guys relieve for all those years, but the moniker for me was I'm a starter. I'm not anything else. So my routine as a starter, I kind of first couple of years was really kind of figuring it out. What time do I need to be out there to kind of start my active warm up? Mine was a jog to center and back, and then kind of an active high knees, butt kickers, hip stretches, all that stuff. And I kind of timed it up so that I would get on the mound at a certain time and be ready for the game. I threw way too many pitches. It was like 40 pitches in off the mound pregame. And then I would go on the mound and throw, 95 to 105 or 110. But I kind of, my routine was kind of built around that. I mean, it was like, okay, I have to make sure that I get long toss in. I have to make sure that I've done flat ground before I go to the mound. And kind of, in a bad way, maybe a little bit of a slave to the routine. Like if I didn't have my routine down and I didn't have all 3 or 4 pitches exactly how I wanted them, I didn't feel like I was going out there ready. And later on, when I went back to starting in Toledo in 06 and then 07 with the Tigers, my routine was I was less throws. It was I'm ready, 15, 20 pitches into this. I can kind of spread out the time between pitches, maybe bring the heart rate back into a range where, I'll be able to sustain it for 2 hours. So that I felt like and it was from watching other guys. I watched, Paul Bird, Jeff Suppan, guys like that when I was with the Royals, when I was with Cleveland. It was a younger team. They had just traded away all the guys. So it was CC, Cliff Lee, Jake Westbrook, Jeremy Guthrie. I mean, we had a bunch of young, talented kids, but we were all trying to figure it out. So the dialogue was a little more like, hey, what do you do? Well, what do you do? Like, why do you do that? So we learned together, and Cleveland was such a good spot for that. Like they really, breathed it into you. And then, being in AAA as a starter is a little bit different, but same routine. And then when I got put in the bullpen in 07, I had no idea. Like I never felt ready. It was like, I haven't thrown enough pitches to be able to throw me out in a game with runners on base and get Jim Thome out or something. I just didn't quite feel, and I didn't quite understand the difference. I should. I mean, Josh, it's not brain surgery. I've been watching the game all my life, but I'd never been the guy on the mound in the 6th, 7th, or 8th inning of a tight game, unless I was starting and I had I'd read all the chapters. I knew the main characters. I kind of knew what was happening. As a reliever, you just roll in there, and the last thing you want to do is like walk the first guy you face, But if it's Jim Thome and it's a tie game and there's a guy on second, it's okay to walk Jim Thome, not throw him a 2-0 cookie or a 3-0 cookie. And I did. We were in Chicago, I think it was a tie game. I think there was nobody on. And I threw a 3-0 fastball middle and he hit it into the bullpen, and Jim Leland jogged out. He was, hey, did you think he was taken right there? Well, yeah, everybody takes 3-0. He goes, not now. Like if you're starting the game, yeah, probably. They want to get the pitch count up and all that. He says it on the mound. He's like, all right, lesson learned. And he goes back in the dugout. And from then on, no more cookies. 3-0 cutter. Like you're not getting any more cookies, but it was a lesson learned. And then when I went to Philly, I went in to be Philly's 5th starter. I wanted to beat Adam Eaton out and really kind of, that Philly lineup back then was putting up some numbers. I'm like, oh, I'm going to win 15 games with a 4.5 ERA. I don't even have to be that good. I just can't be bad. And went in and they said, look, Eaton's on a 3-year contract. He's going to be the 5th starter. We want you to go figure out how to be a bullpen piece. We need somebody that can plug things in the 6th or 7th inning. And we think you could be that. And I was, I wanted to win at that point because the Tigers were winning and I liked the way that felt. So I bought in. And about halfway through the season, they were still having me hit with the 5 starters in case I needed to be one of those guys that would go long or maybe get a 5th spot. And Jimmy Williams, the manager, who's our bench coach, and Charlie Manuel, they we're around the turtle, around the cage, and they're like, "Hey, come here. You can keep hitting with these guys, but we're gonna go get somebody." It ended up being Joe Blanton. We're not going to put you in. You're too valuable right now and comfortable. We're comfortable with you. We think we can win with you pitching in the 6th, 7th, or sometimes the 8th inning. And instead of like calling my agent, complaining, I said, "I'm in. Like, let's go win." And I kind of owned it. And I was, it's a piece of you. I mean, you're 28 years old. That's not what you signed up to do. But it was just a maturity thing. I wanted to win and learning. So going back to how to be a reliever, I threw like 30 pitches to get ready almost every time. I ran out of gas late in the year, but the next year, 09, 10, as I kept going, I could throw 7, 8 warm-up pitches and have them pick up the phone, call down. I'm ready. Because I know once I locate a couple glove side fastballs, I'm close. I'm going to jog in. I get 7 more and I'm ready versus just wearing yourself down. And I think that's why you see old veterans in playoff rosters, because they know how to get ready. They also have usually been with other World Series teams or playoff teams, and they're just not going to get blown away by being in Yankee Stadium and the third deck. They're just going to go execute and be the process over outcome, that type of thing. But yeah, learning to be a bullpen guy was really learning about how to land an off-speed pitch, in even counts, behind in counts, kind of pitching backwards unless you had the stuff to pitch kind of, traditionally. And that was where the cutter really came in. Like I could just throw cutter or sinker and they were contact counts. I was no longer trying to get a swing and miss. I mean, occasionally I would try to get a swing and miss with something, but it was really about just limiting damage and getting Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley or some of the middle infielders I had. Let's just get the ball in their hands and let's go hit. Like it went back, what it did? It went back to like Little League Baseball. Like the only reason you pitched was to get 3 outs so we can go hit.
Right.
Like it's not about being sexy out on the mound. It's about getting 3 outs and let's go bash these guys. And that is what it felt like on those Tigers teams. It's what it felt like in Philly. Felt like that with the Braves in 11 with Chipper in that group. And that was what was really fun. Like you were no longer like an individual LLC running around. You were part of the team trying to win. And really that's what this is all about.
So when was your official like welcome to the show moment? When did you just look up and realize, man, I made it?
That's good. I thought it would have been the old Tiger Stadium was kind of, but it was almost such an experience that I really didn't have that. So I'll tell you, it was Richie Dower was our third base coach. He passed away a couple years ago with cancer. He played with Jim Palmer and on those Orioles teams that were really good in like the late 70s and even the early 80s. But he was with Jim Palmer. Jim Palmer was the color guy and still is for the Orioles. And maybe he's radio, I imagine he's on TV, good looking guy, but I gave up a home run. The home run to Cal was not the only one I gave up. I gave up another one while we were there and we were going to come back and play the Orioles in like 4 weeks. And Richie Dower, didn't pitch bad. I think I went 7, gave up 4, but I kept trying to throw these off-speed pitches to Cal Ripken Jr. And so literally, I don't remember if I was having a beer or not because I was young. But Richie Dower's like, somebody wants to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And I walk out to the hallway outside of the locker room, the clubhouse, and Jim Palmer's standing there. And he's like, hey, kid, pretty good job today, but we need to talk. And I'm like looking up at him, and it's like, it's Jim Palmer. This is really cool. And he's like, do you think you're going to throw a breaking ball that Cal Ripken hasn't seen? No, sir. No, I don't. Like that. He said, he's getting old. He hasn't seen your fastball. Attack him with the fastball, and if he starts to cheat, throw the breaking ball. Okay. So, 4 weeks go by, I get out there, and I didn't care about any of the other guys in the lineup. My only focus was when Cal comes up, I'm going to beat him with a heater. I think he popped out to first, popped out to second, and I think I struck him out on a fastball. And as I'm walking off, I didn't have the balls to look up to see if Jim Palmer, but he came down after the game and was like, that's what I'm talking about, kid. And like that moment was one of the oh my God, I really am a big leaguer. Like I got Cal Ripken out, Richie Dowers telling me this, and Jim Palmer kind of walked me through, like, this is how to be a big leaguer. And it was, that piece. I think the piece of really feeling like I, earned being a big leaguer is coming back from Tommy John, like being away from the game for almost 2 years and having surgery on September 5th and being back in the big leagues because I worked so hard and I was ready inside of a year. I felt like, man, that's getting knocked off the horse, and not just jumping right back on, but having to heal and having to go through that and getting back. There was a sense of pride there. And then the call up in 06 and 07, where I'd been down in the minor leagues for almost 2 years straight and had to make the adjustment, change the scouting report. Like, there's moments where you kind of pat yourself on the back. You're like, most guys would have just gone home, back to school, do whatever it is, start a business, do some landscaping. I don't know. But like, and my buddies that played, they're like, you just kept showing back up and you kept fighting and you kept grinding. I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is the greatest game on the planet, of course. Yes. And so there's a lot of, coming to it. I think being in those big stadiums, pitching in Yankee Stadium against the 2000 lineup, I was doing stuff that 22-year-olds maybe shouldn't be. There's some really good ones out there, and maybe they just didn't have enough depth. They had, hey, let's put this kid out to massacre and see how he does. But I was really, really surprised that looking back at it, that I was doing what I was doing, and that I kept getting up off the mat, Rocky style. But did it.
So what are some of the toughest challenges that you had to face on the mound? And with that, I'll ask, maybe who is a hitter that you hated to see step in the batter's box, and who is a hitter that you owned pretty much every time?
So when I was young, Maglio or Ordonez, I couldn't get Maglio out. It didn't matter if I painted a pitch exactly where I wanted to, or, threw a 0-0 curveball. He was hitting pitches off foul poles, and next time up, I'd paint a pitch 94 away, and he'd rifle it down the right field line for a triple or a double. And it was 9 for 12 off me. And so anytime he walked up, and you had to pitch to him because Big Frank was on deck. Frank Thomas is just waiting, and they're fighting over the bat rack to get up there. They're forgetting where they're hitting in the lineup because this kid's throwing meatballs. And so that was kind of the guys I didn't want to see. I mean, Manny owned me early, the Cleveland lineup, and look, Tommy was hitting right behind him. Those lineups are tough. Now, late in my career, and I'll get back to who I owned. I hate doing it because they're great guys, but now I can be friends with them. I couldn't be friends with them when we were playing because but I got Maglio out late. I got Manny out late. And it was, part of it was because I learned how to pitch, and I learned where to miss and how to get ahead in counts, and kind of which Manny Ramirez or Jim Thome or Frank Thomas or Maglio do I want to face. I want to face the guy that's hitting 0-1, 0-2, 1-2 in the count, not the 2-0, 3-1 Maglio. And that was kind of the adjustment in my career, and that's why they feast on young guys. Jeff Francoeur I think he was 1 for 19 off me. And Frenchie's maybe the nicest guy in baseball still, even as a broadcaster. And we have mutual friends, and I could not befriend him while I was playing because I knew the numbers. I think he was 2 for 3 off me in spring trainings, and he'd stand on second base after a double. He's like, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. Like, it's still, because I would go into a game and I would throw him a first pitch cutter, he'd double play. I'd bounce a curveball, he'd swing through it. He'd line out, and it didn't matter. You're out. And Frenchie, so Roy Halladay story real quick here. Roy, nobody came in relief for Roy. Like, Doc was his own reliever. Like, you don't bring somebody in to come get somebody out that I can get out. And so we're in Citi Field playing the Mets, 2010, and Doc was pretty good. It's 7th inning, and kind of eyewash. They call down, get Durbin up. I'm like, I'm not going to this game. Like, Roy throws all the same pitches I do. His are all 70, 80 grade, and mine are all 40, 50 grade. There's no chance I'm going into this game. And then I look at the lineup. I'm like, ooh, David Wright's in there, who I'm pretty successful against, and Frenchie's right there. I might be going in to face those two guys. And sure as hell, he gets guys on second and third with 1 out. And, Charlie starts walking out like, hey, bring in Durbin. And usually, starting pitcher hands the ball off the manager in the big leagues. They don't wait like they do in high school or sometimes in college to, hey, hold the rope or whatever. They go into the dugout and manager hands you the ball. Well, he waited. And he was like, get these guys out. And he didn't even know what to do because he'd never done it before, but he didn't want to give up the baseball. And he wanted to let me know, like, hey, do your job. And so I get both guys out and ground ball to third and like a pop-up in the infield. And when I'm walking, like Roy wasn't waiting down the steps. He was like on like the warning track outside of the dugout, like, hey, good job. And he walked off. I was like, was he going to kill me if I didn't get him out? Like he's going to go me, then Charlie, then whoever else needs to die, and it was just that intense. But like knowing that you have good numbers against, not just confidence for me, but obviously, our organization's like, we're trying to win games. Durbin gets Frenchie out. Like, let's go get him out. But yeah, that was one of those I didn't mind him coming up, because it was like, I could probably throw this right down the middle, and he's in his own dome so bad at this point, he's not going to hit it. So yeah, I gave up plenty of missiles when I was young, and I was a lot better against really good hitters when I was older.
So I got a couple more for you.
Long enough that my brain can keep. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I got a couple more, and I'll get you out of here. I was going to ask you too, how would you attack hitters any differently today? And if so, how would you attack them?
Yeah, so stuff wise, when I was younger, we talked about it briefly. I can't remember if we were recording or not, but I'll go back to it. When I was drafted, I was 90, 94, touching 95 with this four-seamer at the top of the zone. Guys either swung and missed it or popped it up or fouled it off. They just could not get on top. But when I came down in the zone, it became very hittable. And if we were pitching today, TrackMan, StatCast, like Rapsodo, all the data would tell us attack the top of the zone with the four-seam, land the breaking ball off of that, and use the changeup when guys are cheating. I would pitch like that. I wasn't allowed to pitch like that because the league wasn't pitching like that. So that's how I would change the way. And I think it would, the part, Josh, that I've learned, and I try to preach this to guys, the old school metrics of first pitch strikes, win the 1-1 count, race to 2 strikes, those play. So I got behind in a ton of counts when I was young, and I would pour the ball over the middle of the plate way more often if I were that young and I could take this 48-year-old brain and put it in my 22-year-old self. It would be like, hey, get ahead and make them hit. Like, don't give them leverage counts, get in leverage counts. That would be the difference in the way that so learn to do that later on. I kind of called it, I was into investing money in houses, long-term gains and kind of long-term investing. Throwing more strikes is an investment in getting outs. Like when you get ahead and you stay ahead and you pour strikes in, the entire team has to adjust to that. When you're on deck and this guy's about to throw a first pitch strike, you're in an 0-1 mentality and mindset versus I know he's going to throw curveball in the dirt, miss, and I'm going to be 2-0 and I'm going to take some daddy hacks. We're going to go get some exit velocity and some EV out here and try to hit some stuff out of here. That's the difference in mentality.
So I'm not going to ask you, we'll talk about the World Series. I'm sure you've probably talked about that, a couple of times. You're winning the World Series in 2008. Yeah. But I would ask you, I'm not going to ask you what it feel like and all that stuff. I want to ask you about the clubhouse. What was the clubhouse like in 2008 during that season?
Man, from the get-go, it was because they were really good in 06 and 07. And coming in, myself, Brad Lidge, Eric Bruntlett, some other pieces, what I noticed, other than Cole Hamels and Jamie Moyer, and maybe Rudy Cienez and Flash Gordon, there were some older guys, there were a couple young guys, but the core of the team was between 27 and 31 years old, all going through kind of the same eras in their life. They were having kids, had a couple kids on the way, getting married or being married for a couple years, and just young, energetic, not had established themselves as big leaguers. And so it really was like, if we win, everybody wanted to go win an arbitration after the year. Everybody wanted to go be a free agent. And I remember Charlie Manuel saying this, it was probably right before the All-Star break. He's like, I hear everybody talking about they want to get paid. He's like, go win and they'll overpay you. Let's go win. And if you think about the guys, Ryan Howard got paid and overpaid. I got overpaid. Jason Worth got overpaid. Chase, go win. And he had been around. Charlie was respectable. Yeah. But it was that message of like that. And that was kind of the energy in the clubhouse. It's like we all got along. There really wasn't any, headbutting. Pat Burrell accepted guys that were going to try to help him win. Chase Utley was this, just stone-faced killer. Jimmy Rollins played the game, almost made it look too easy, where he's almost not given the recognition for the Hall of Fame that he probably should get. Ruiz behind the plate was just a genius at calling games and connecting with pitchers. Victorino was a spark plug. Like our bullpen, Lidge was perfect. And actually, one of the messages that Lidge said about 3 weeks into the season, big league season, not spring, I looked at Ledger and the rest of the bullpen. I was like, do y'all get like physically ill knowing that you might go into the game? And they're like, every time. And it would kind of normalize being like, that performance anxiety. But that was kind of the team we had, like this really honest, be the best player you can, not just for you and your family, but for the rest of the guys in this clubhouse. So we just got along really well and wanted to go make our mark and win. And we knew we had a team that could do that. And the city likes teams like that. Philly specifically, I know there's some other really, passionate fan bases, but Philly, man, you go 2-0 on a guy, you're getting booed, no matter how good your numbers are. And I responded really well to that. I thought that our energy and the way we played the game matched the Philly energy. And I think that was one of those things that it was a fit. It really was.
So when did you know it was time for you to, hang up the cleats personally? Was it, losing some velocity off the fastball, or when did you realize, I think it's time?
So 2013, I wanted to, stay with the Braves. Really enjoyed being there. It was a great clubhouse. Philly, obviously I love Philly. I wanted to go there, and I got in the best shape that I'd been in years. And I just couldn't get guys out, and the team wasn't playing well. If I could go talk to myself, I would have kept playing. But I told myself from 18 years old on, from the time that I signed, that if I ever was driving to the ballpark and I just didn't want to go, that I should probably shut it down. And that was one of the first times that I got in my truck and I'm driving down the field and I'm like, I don't really want to go through the entire routine and grind today. And oddly enough, it wasn't I just wasn't having fun. I didn't feel like I was valuable, and not because of, it was more me than it was anybody else. They saw me as, even if you're not pitching well, you can still mentor, you can still be valuable in this clubhouse, teach guys how to be big leaguers. But oddly enough, the same day that I had that feeling, Ruben Amaro Jr. was waiting for me as I walked in the clubhouse. And this was late May in 2013. He said, "Hey, you got a baby on the way, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, little girl, late June, due date, all that stuff." He's like, "Why don't you go home, be there for that whole process with your wife, see the baby be born, and if you want to go back to Lehigh, go to AAA and kind of get ready again, come back up here, go do it. But you don't look like Chad. You don't look like the guy who and the team's not." He said, "We're not going to win a ton. Give some guys some chances to come up here and just communicate with me." But that was the same day that I had the same feeling. So obviously it was visible. Mm-hmm. But drove home the next day to Louisiana, and my little girl, who's 12 now, was born. And I had guys ask. Harold Reynolds, I went with the Marucci Sports, is from Baton Rouge. So I went with Kurt, and Kurt Ainsworth was a first round pick for the Giants and pitched with the Orioles. And we ended up going to the winter meetings, and I'm walking through a crowd, and Harold stops me. He's like, "Are you sure you're done? Make sure you're done." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm done. I think I'm done." But that echoes in my head because at 35, I felt old. Now that I'm 48, I'm like, "Man, you were 35. Right. Maybe you just need to take a deep breath, go for a long walk, and come back and reassess." But yeah, I think you play for 17 years, and some of your best friends in baseball have retired, and they're on, living their life, and you start to think that way. And if you're not a closer or a starter and you're kind of a long reliever, it takes kind of a reshuffling of the deck and rethinking it. But yeah, I thought it was the right time at the time. I think I have the capacity I should have probably gone to a drive line or a tread and just seen, because I'm still athletic. I mean, I can't throw 85 anymore even, but I think I would have been able to go and do some of the training, go look at, the way I move, my biomechanics, and, train a little bit differently. And so I got curious about that stuff after my career, read Hacking the Kinetic Chain, did a bunch of driveline stuff at my house because I had guys asking me, like, what do you think about this? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, let me go find out. So I'll use myself as the guinea pig. And then just, kept mentoring and helping guys out. And now we have a performance pitching academy that we have 100 guys plus that are in and out of there. Some guys that have, gone on to play pro ball, and some guys that are in college right now, and elite high school guys. And a lot of it is a mix between that old school stuff that I just talked about for, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and some of the new progressive stuff like, hey, we need to get on track, man, and see which of your fastballs is your best pitch. Which of your breaking balls matches the fastball that's your best pitch? What are we going to build off of? How do we move? Why do some guys spin it better than others? And really just kind of develop these minds that have a chance to go be pretty good players and chase their dream a little bit.
And my final question is, what is one thing? I wrap up every interview with the same question. What is one thing you want people to know about you that they may not?
Oh, that I'm so proud of the kids that we have. We have a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 18-year-old, and I'm just really proud of. They reflect, my wife and I. We want kids that do things hard and get good at doing hard things well. That they're good teammates to their when parents meet them, that they're like, hey, eye contact, handshakes, well spoken, but man, when they go between the lines, they're killers. Proud of that, and kind of how that spills over into who they'll be in the future, who we hope they'll be. So more than anything, I mean, yeah, that's probably one outlier thing that my grandfather was born without one hand and lost the other in an accident, and he played at the Grand Ole Opry with prosthetics, the steel guitar, and Ramblin' Joe Durbin. And I just think that's really cool. My dad played and lead singer until I was born. I think I don't know if he would have had a heavy duty rock and roll career, but he could really sing and really play and kind of shut it down to come, raise a little Chad. But yeah, I would say that's an outlier thing. Ramblin' Joe Durbin randomly playing the steel guitar, but it just really proud dad, really like almost maybe too proud sometimes, really happy that they're turning into who they are.
Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Man, it was awesome. I appreciate it, Josh.
All right. Thank you so much.